Do you think NASA is more about politics?
Many Americans don't know it or don't want to know it.
Maybe China can beat NASA.
I'm not a spokesman for China, but they're doing so well.
I am pretty sure America won't let it. What about the alien?
And there's no proof of it. The moon landing was fake, that it never happened. And picking up people and taking them in flying saucers. The whole thing back in 1969 and the early 70s was faked. It's a Hollywood movie set.
So it's not possible to fake it.
I think some of them still believe it's not real, or at least...
Why nobody flying to the moon right now?
Yes, we've been there, so that's important. That's been accomplished. Back to the moon, then on to Mars and beyond.
Hello guys, my name is Dmitry, and today my guest is Mr. John Dankowski. He has a huge experience to work in NASA. So today we're gonna talk about NASA and space, not only about his experience, and also about his thoughts about some space stuff. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Dmitry.
Yeah. As we know, NASA is a huge organization. So I wonder to ask, do you think NASA is more about politics or it's more about science?
It is, of course, both, but I prefer to hope that it's more about science. And I wish the world would cooperate in space exploration instead of making it political.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Yeah, I know NASA trying to be a little bit separated from the politics, at least on public.
Yes. Well, very well known, of course, is the International Space Station. Okay. And there, the Soviet Union, when it was then the Soviet Union, and the U.S. began cooperation. Even after the Soviet Union became Russia, the cooperation continued. Whatever difficulties those two countries experienced with each other on the ground, the space station continued unaffected. There were mild interactions, but basically it continued to this day and is still functioning well. The space station was built by about 16 different countries, but Russia and America were the primary builders of it and operators of it. In fact, there's always a Russian cosmonaut and an American astronaut on it, as well as other Russians or Americans or third country people. But the cooperation is wonderful. I wish they could have brought China in early on. But there was political maneuvering and the distrust by the Americans of the Chinese, whether that's well-founded or not, since we trusted the Soviet Union, but they're not in it. So, of course, the Chinese went ahead and built their own space station.
Yes. China a little bit separating from all this. Everyone thinks that NASA is number one in space, all this stuff. So what do you think? Can someone beat, maybe China can beat NASA in the future?
Yes, as we look at, again, politics are involved. You cannot exclude them from the conversation. But the growth of China in all technology and infrastructure in the past 20 or 30 years has been amazing. And the world knows that. Many Americans don't know it or don't want to know it or hear too much negative propaganda about China. I'm not a spokesman for China, but they're doing so well. And on a curve of growth, they are moving at a very fast angle, whereas the U.S. has to deal with so many issues as a democracy. If the government in China wants to launch a certain spaceship, it just prepares it and does it. The U.S. has to debate all the costs, the political ramifications for one side or the other's feelings about that launch of that, environmental questions and so on. And so the U.S. could lag behind. The next goal is to try to get on the moon again and, of course, to get to Mars. And those two goals, it is very possible that China could take the lead in both of them and be the first there. Maybe not. It's pretty good tie right now.
Yes. It depends on many factors because, of course, an economical situation in China and all this geopolitical situation. So we'll see, maybe in 10, 20 years. But I am pretty sure America won't let it.
Well, they'll fight to keep that first place.
Yes.
And secret dealings are going on as they launch. Recently, the United States launched another space shuttle. It's not the real shuttle of the NASA shuttle, their own one. And it carries all kinds of equipment that we don't know about. And as they do that, China's doing things too that are behind the scenes because their space program is run by the military and government. NASA is a separate organization, so it's not run by the military. The military cooperates with it and uses it, but there's a difference there in how much we know about what the Chinese are doing and what we know about what we're doing ourselves. And of course, even the European Space Agency and Japan are in the India is moving forward in space projects. And while they're not likely to get to the moon and Mars before the other two, they're going pretty fast.
What about the competitors of NASA in America, for example, SpaceX?
Okay.
Or some other competitors, do they cooperate together with NASA, or all of them trying to be separate and build their own programs?
Well, I think the answer is both, because we do know that Elon Musk and some of his flights took place in Florida at the NASA Rocket Launching Center, so there was a great deal of interaction with NASA in Florida. But I noticed Musk's space Starship went up yesterday, finally, after several failures, but there was a successful launch yesterday, and that was done in Texas, and that was primarily a private enterprise issue, not NASA. Still, I cannot think that there wouldn't still be lots of necessary interaction, sharing information, because it's such a complex problem that private and public sectors have to cooperate.
So let's talk about some specific questions. I know everyone who work in NASA, I'm pretty sure the people asking about this. What about the aliens?
Okay. The aliens and something else believe on the part of lots of people that the moon landing was fake, that it never happened. Aliens are one issue, and what I just said about so-called fake moon landing is another issue. So let's go back to your original question of aliens. This, however, becomes a little bit personal and my own belief, but I believe there are no space aliens, not per se, not as a humanoid-like figure anywhere here, and landing in New Mexico and Arizona and picking up people and taking them in flying saucers. There is, I think it's what, Project 38 or 68 in New Mexico. I should know the number, but there's stories in New Mexico that we have proof and have captured people or so-called people from other planets. I just don't think it's true. I think, one, it couldn't be kept secret that much. Secondly, there'd be some impact of it that was more evidential than just conversation. But secondly, there could be something like this, quite possibly. Life forms on Earth because tiny particles of living organs have come through comets and through meteors that have hit the States and may hit the world, and that those kinds of things may still be living organisms that are somewhere hidden in rocks, but they're impacting on us, and there's no proof of it. And since they're not impacting on us, it's certainly worth studying, but not worth thinking that there are creatures out there that are going to do unusual things to us. So, secondly, I actually worked person to person with several astronauts when I had that assignment in Florida, and none of them claimed to have seen any aliens. One astronaut, I think Eugene Schmidt, said he saw some unusual object, and he's been questioned over and over again.
In the space.
Yes.
Unusual object in the space.
Yes, in space. And there's some very weak evidence that people said they've seen things, but almost all astronauts denied that there are space creatures here on Earth. But what almost bothers me more, really bothers me a lot, it bothers the astronaut a lot, the people as you go on the web and on Facebook who argue that the whole thing back in 1969 and the early 70s was faked. It's a Hollywood movie set. And there are a lot of people who apparently truly believe that and fight arguably on the internet about it. Some may be just trolls to make trouble or argue for the sake of argument, but many seem to believe it. And that's quite infuriating. The space program is real, and it costs millions of dollars, and millions of people around the world have been directly involved in it. And if the U.S. pulled that as some kind of a fake stunt back in 1969, as one commentator said, it would be cheaper to do it for real than to make the fake thing that they tried to claim. Astronauts, when you talk to them and say, you never went to the moon, they really become pretty unhappy about that. There's too much evidence. And if you go to the space centers, especially Kennedy, where they launch the rockets, you'll be totally impressed by those giant rockets that are being launched into space at the cost of millions of dollars and use of thousands of workers. isn't fake. And
It's,
never
yeah,
has
it's
been.
not possible to fake it.
No.
And by the way, I just read one comment from one girl. She asked, why nobody flying to the moon right now?
Yes. Yeah, okay. And that, we did. And people say, how come now, so many years later, we haven't been back again since? First of all, interesting point, we've been there. So that's important. That's been accomplished. To be accomplished again for no strong purpose, isn't necessarily, other things took priority. Countries have their own down on earth problems to deal with. But secondly, if we want to go back, we want to go back even with greater scientific research available to us and greater safety for the astronauts. And so let's now take today's 60-year later technology, and now we can go back again. And we will be, and the Chinese will go, and others may go. So we will go back again, but we've just built up so much new technology in those years that it should be much smoother operation.
Probably some base will be built on the moon.
Yes, that's one of the plans,
So
is to
the
build a
next stage.
permanent or a long stay for people, and include men and women, and ways to feed them and house them and keep them there, and give them their oxygen and plants and food. And so all of that will be so much more advanced now than when they just wanted to get there as their first goal. Partly political, to beat the Soviet Union, but partly for science to get there and make that man's accomplishment.
How did these billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk change the NASA?
Yeah. Again, separating politics and economics and space, I support those guys because they are taking some of their money, and they've got a lot of money, and giving it to science. And if they give it to science in other ways, like medicine, that's wonderful. But if they give some of it to space and involve themselves in space programs, good. That's advancing the space program for the world. And it's also kind of pulling some of the pressure off NASA if they want to get the credit for doing it themselves, or have commercial reasons for wanting to go to outer space or to the moon or planets. Good for them. Their involvement in politics, such as the whole Elon Musk thing the past year with Trump, and the back and forth fighting and bickering they've had between us, as well as the so-called love affair they had for a while, that's kind of too bad. It damaged Elon Musk's reputation, and he may or may not be I don't question his morality, but it impacted on his automobile industry with the Tesla company and so on. My sentence to wrap this up is he should have stayed out of politics and go on with space, and the same with Bezos and the others.
How do you think? It's very interesting. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they doing a big part of their job, trying to expand the space and NASA as well.
Right.
What about this space race with the USSR, Soviet Union? Is it? Of course, it was mostly about the politics and this Cold War fight, but I think it improved the NASA and the technology as well.
Yes.
Very much.
There's always a question, is cooperation or competition better? And there are good points for both. But there was competition, and the Soviets didn't win that one. In fact, once the Americans landed on the moon, they just gave up on the program. As a matter of fact, the Russians, after the Soviet Union was in its process of changing, they saw that the Americans were building a space shuttle, so they built one. It was called the Buran, which means snowstorm. But they built only one, and they flew it unmanned, which was very good, and landed it very well. But that was it, and then they discontinued, since the Americans had the space shuttle in a full-scale program with 5 different shuttles and a long-range program of flying over 100 times into space. So for the competition mentality of the Soviets, there just said, no, let's not bother with it.
Yes.
And they tend to focus back on ISS, and I like the ISS because of its international cooperation. And there's something that many people don't know about the ISS. Many do, millions do, but many do not. It's still flying now. Crews go up approximately every 6 months. Crews from international countries. They live up there. They do all kinds of very valuable scientific experiments, looking at the Earth or looking further at space, or experiments with materials on the space station. And to me, a very interesting factor for those who are listening to this or watching this, you can see it. You can see it every morning and every night, depending on the weather where you are and depending on your location and other factors. But you can go to the web, look it up and say, what time is the space station coming over tonight? And then it will tell you. You are in Hua Hin, Thailand, or you're in Guadeloupe, or in Bolivia or Botswana. They'll tell you where it's coming over your place, from which direction, and precisely what minute. You can go out in a field with your friends on a clear night and say, watch the sky at 6:15 p.m. You'll see the spaceship come over, and you'll see it, and it'll be there. Your friends will be impressed, but maybe they'll think of the science behind it. 6 people are living in there. They go around the world every 60 minutes. We cannot see them in the daytime because the reflection of the sun blinds it, and we cannot see in the middle of the night. But it's usually morning or evening when you can see it, and it's fun to do.
Yes. What is the biggest misconception that people have about NASA?
Well, the two things we did mention was aliens and the deniers who say we didn't go to the moon. So those two misconceptions are much larger in the public than I thought. Some people not well educated or didn't go to school or something might think that, but how can 25 American citizens who read and are literate and have a free press disbelieve the space program occurred and still believe this? I think some of them still believe it's not real, or at least it's done for...
Many people believe still.
Yeah, still, it's very, very hard to fathom that.
A huge amount of people believe in the flat Earth.
The flat Earth, well, that's that, and they're in a similar class.
Yes,
in fact, I think many are in the same club. And again, are some of them just doing that just to be on the internet and make noise, or are there real believers who say we didn't go?
What job you did on NASA?
Okay, now that I've got to back your conversation up, you very politely introduced me as having a great or a grand assignment. In fact, it was great in an unusual way, but not a significant, in fact, nothing to do with science and technology and sending rockets to the moon. I was a teacher most of my life, and I retired in the early 2000s, and when I did, I went back to live in Florida because that had a similar climate to Taiwan where I was living, because it's a lower cost state like compared to Northeast or California, and because I had a son who lived nearby. So I chose Florida, and I didn't want to retire. I'm not the kind of guy who's a couch potato and is going to sit there and drink beer and watch baseball games. And sure enough, I was in the town called Merritt Island, which is the location of the Space Center, Kennedy Space Center. And so I applied for a job with them and got it. I was a retired teacher, and it just turned out by coincidence that they, at the same time, interviewed 2 other retired teachers, and they wanted us to be what are called communicators. And communicators are, in other words, tour guides. And so we were tour guides, but with a more glorified name. But those other 2 teachers and myself, we were just common American citizens who only knew enough about the space program from what the general public follows usually in the news all through their lives. So I didn't have any expertise in it at all, just general knowledge. And they wanted us to go out and tell the public all about the space program. And of course, we were not ready to do that. So they gave us 9 days. And in 9 days, they took us out every day on a bus to see all of the equipment, the rockets on the pad ready to launch. It was very impressive and amazing. And you get excited about it right away. And the bus shuttles were being launched, so we were witnessing that. And the crews were there, and we were meeting them. And so our team leaders would do the speech, and then we would learn day by day to do it. And we do it several times a day. And then finally, on day number 9, they said, you're going out on your own. And the public will the tourists who come every day from around the world, thousands, will get on these buses, and you'll be the guide on the bus and tell them what you're seeing. And we each said, we're not ready. In fact, we were very anxious. We can't do it. And they said, you are ready. In 9 days, you learned enough of the basics that the general public doesn't know. And so you can answer their general questions in time, on the job training, as you do it more and more, read more and more. They give tons of things to read. And ask your audience on the bus. They will answer you. Scientists may be on the bus, something like that. Or deflect the question a little bit and get it off to their minds until you can learn it. You cannot say, I don't know. You can say that once or twice, I'm new. But if you did it all through your speech, you would get fired. So we did. And over time, we got the space program down to details that I could not remember now at all, because we learned all the speeds and temperatures and fuels and all the chemicals that went into the fuels, and we had to do it, and we had to know it. And quiz me now, I won't pass the test. But we did it well. We didn't, not bus guiding is one thing we did, but we did many other things. And so they added to our knowledge, and they added to our wider experience. One of them was to give a speech in a room every day, where you talk to an audience who's in the room, not on a bus. And so that's a whole microphone and stage situation. Then another one was to be out in what's called the rocket garden. All the old used rockets were there, or models of them, full size, for us to describe way back from the Mercury and Apollo programs. And they were all there in their capsules. So you learn by teaching, and the public would come every day. What's this missile? What did that rocket do? Another job that we had was to work with the ISS where it's being assembled. They were putting the parts of the ISS together in this big clean room at Kennedy Space Center, and we'd be in an overlooking room watching down on the workers in the clean room, assembling these pieces for it. But another one, we had 5 or 6 different jobs, which was good for variety too. But the one I guess I'd like to talk about the most is for people, if you ever go visit Kennedy Space Center, they still do it. You can check it out. You have to pay a little more for your very expensive ticket. But I think you pay about $20 extra, and you get to do what is called dine with the astronaut, dinner, have lunch. Mm-hmm. A cafeteria is open, and about 100 people go in as the audience, and they serve a standard American meal. And while they're serving the meal, videos of the astronauts' flight are shown while the people are eating. You can see that. Then the astronaut comes out. And my job was to be with that astronaut all day with him that day in his little office. He's got a little special astronaut's office. And you go get coffee for him if you want to. You just chat. And you learn so much from the actual astronaut. Retired. These are retired astronauts. And then you go to that dining room. And the people ask questions at the end. And my job was to have the microphone and go on, introduce him, by the way, and tell them about which flights he took, and then answer their questions and hold the microphone. And again, more learning for me and the audience, gaining more knowledge about space. So it was really good.
Actually, it's amazing how many details you remember from this time.
Well, yeah, now 25 years later, because I was there 2006, 7, 8.
What surprised you most when you just visit NASA at first time? Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The surprise is an interesting word. But what impressed us the most were the two things that rocket launches and the landings. The rocket landings are less spectacular, but they're still amazing because they're coming home safely, and the way they land is special. But let's go back to the launches. I was there for 7 launches of either Atlantis or Challenger or Columbia or Discovery or the Endeavour. That's the five spaceships. I can remember that now. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
And I was there for the launch. And the launch is just so stunning. Your body shakes as the earth shakes, and the rumbling of the noise is so terrific. The noise follows the launch because sound moves slowly. And so as it's launching, you begin to feel vibrations of the earth, and it's so loud. We were allowed to be, because I work there, we were allowed to be 3 miles from the launch. That was the closest Other people like visiting tourists and so on are like 4 miles. So we really got good close-up shots, as safe as you could get. And then nobody else was in there. And so, and of course, the fact of the launch being successful and all the ones I did was just heart-moving to see that it's going up to carrying those people and bringing them into space safely. The landing is unique because you may know that the space shuttle doesn't have engines. It's launched by its rockets, and then the rockets drop off, and the space shuttle goes on around the Earth about 15 days, and variable in 14, 15, 16 days. And then when they land, they can land in California and they can land in New Mexico because runways are set up for that. But they almost always try to land in Florida because that's where they take off. So if they land in Florida, you don't have to cart them across the country and to get them ready for the next flight. They're reusable spacecraft. If they land in California, you may know this, or the audience who's listening or watching may know, they are put on the top of a Boeing 747. The shuttle is put on top, like piggyback, and flown from California to Florida. But if they land by themselves, if they land in Florida, they land by themselves, and they're coming in, they're just like an airplane. They look like kind of a 707, more than a 747. They're smaller. And they, since they have no engine, as they're coming through space and they're going through the atmosphere, they could easily burn up. Just burn up, and they did once. The Columbia did burn up that way. They have heat tiles underneath the shuttle, and those tiles protect it from the very, very high temperatures of entering the atmosphere. And so it's always nice to look in the sky and you see it circling. It's come through the atmosphere and it's about to land. When it lands, it's a very long runway, one of the longest runways in the world, because they need that distance. They have to coast to landing since there's no engines, and they can put up called a drogue chute that slows them down in the back a little bit. But they can only come in once. They cannot go around. Sometimes you're in an airliner, you're landing in Hong Kong or somewhere, and the pilot says there's some problem on the ground. We have to circle the field. Well, the space shuttle can't do that. When it comes in, it's got to do it first time successfully. And all the times I saw it land, it did, of course. But so those are amazing parts of the program. Surprise, and I don't. This is not a surprise. It's more personal and showing off. But I got a kick out of something that might answer your question. I speak Chinese. I learned Chinese in Air Force and lived 50 years in Taiwan and taught Chinese. So why I'm telling you that, without trying to be a show-off, is at the space program, many of the visitors were from China or Taiwan or Singapore. And so once in a while, I'd throw my speech into Chinese, and they were really often very surprised by that. It was kind of fun. Indeed, after I left NASA, I got a job in Taiwan with a space education program that sent me all over Taiwan and China to talk in Chinese about the space program. But once again, if you ask me to do that now, it would be a struggle, but I could probably do the basics.
When people thinking about NASA, they just imagine astronauts and how they do their job. But what is the most important job behind the scenes?
Okay, astronauts they have to be young, strong, healthy, well-educated, be a pilot, have something like 1,000 hours of flying before they can be considered. All the original astronauts were from the military until more recently. They have to have a personality that you live well with your workmates. Your lives depend on each other. Right now, if something goes wrong in the space station and there's something unstable about any of the astronauts, there's something mentally wrong or temper or something like that, they would be in big trouble in a hurry. So they have to be the right stuff person to have that assignment. They go up, there's no doctors with them, and so they go up there 6 months on the space station, for example, and if they get sick, seriously sick, they can't do anything about it. They can do first aid and some basic medical care, but they can't do the serious stuff, and they cannot bring the shuttle down at will. or the space station cannot bring down or get a capsule to go up and get them. So they have to be mentally even ready for that. Of course, they're in a very clean environment, and when they go up, they're at their healthiest. If they're not healthy the day they go up, they don't go, of course, and they get scrubbed and someone goes up. So they have to deal with that. They have to deal with living in weightlessness for 6 months as their bodies float in near no gravity, and that changes their blood system, their bones. In fact, they come back pretty much changed. Their bones have to readjust and their blood, so they have to be capable of dealing with that kind of question. Their meals are unusual. They have things they eat through little plastic packages and so on. If the food spills out, it flies around the inside of the station. Or they have to get used to hours because they go around the Earth every 15 hours, and so that gives them a couple of hours daylight, night. And so all of these adjustments, mental and physical and social, interactive, and language, because there are at least one Russian and one American, often Germans and others, and so they got to coordinate in language as much as they can. A million challenges for them.
It's interesting. When I'm thinking about the working in NASA, it's mostly like a romantic idea for me.
Yes.
But I guess there is a lot of routine and paperwork in there.
It's romantic.
It's romantic?
Well, adventuresome because of what's happening. And it's a little challenging in this, everyone's job. When you go to work, wherever you work, you have some on-the-ground problems. Like Florida is very hot. And so those bus tours, we'd be out, and the tourists put up with it too, but they're happily touring. They've just been to Disneyland. Now they want to go see the space program. And some of them are from the Midwest in America where they've never seen the ocean. So the Space Center is right on the ocean. And so they're excited to see that. But I think I've got off topic here. That in order to keep up, you want to keep your job and you like your job, then they do give you lots of reading, but you want to. And so when I go home at night, I'd be reading space things all in through the evening, look for anything I could find on TV about space, I go to movies about space. You start building yourself around the space program mentally. You still enjoy your private life and go shopping and go to movies and so on, but you focus on that as a sort of the center of your life at that time. And it's a challenge, but it's a challenge of love.
How to become a part of this NASA team? Is it possible to get a job without any specific education?
Yes, that would depend on what the job is. And of course, I was, in a way, as a school teacher, just taken from the street, taken from the public, without scientific and math and astronomy background. But no, if you really want to get into a serious science job, then of course, science and math. And schools are paying attention to that now. Today, many schools around the world are focusing on robots, drones, clones, all the modern technology, AI that's coming.
AI, yes.
So if you're interested in space, you've got to go in that direction. Science, math, and robotics.
So what one of the part of the job of NASA doing, they started launching rockets.
Right.
Yes. Another part, they doing exploration of the space.
Yes.
Correct. What else are they doing?
Okay, a lot of people are unaware of this and barely give it any thought. NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So it's really two fields, space and aeronautics. And they do programs, but they just don't catch the public eye that relate to aviation in America and flight schedules and airlines and developing planes and technology. I don't really know what they do, but it is a big part of their title that they just do this aeronautics side of things. But like something like, I don't know, the Department of Commerce. To many people, that's just a word. It doesn't seem to mean very much. So you say NASA with the aeronautics part, and you just know they want to know about the space part. So the public hears all the time about the space part. And if you want to know about the aeronautics part, you've got to go look it up and see what they're doing. And it'll be on the web. They will tell you. And maybe some new development of a standard aircraft. It's a high-speed aircraft with particularly altitude or speed qualities or something. NASA will be involved in that.
Of course, they do some development for technology that could be used in space with
Right.
people or without people, for robotic, for all this.
Right.
Okay.
And of course, Trump has just declared or established we have a Air Force Academy, Navy Academy, and Army Academy, but now we have a Space Academy, so it's a new military force in this military forces. And I haven't heard much about how it's doing. It's only about a year old, but now there's a military wing of the space program.
Probably you could remember maybe some discoveries that was not mentioned too much in the news, but it was amazing for you. Maybe you remember something like this?
No, I'm pausing here to try to find an answer. There are lots of things. As somebody who's interested in space, lots of events go on that the general public doesn't get in the news. The networks don't find it newsworthy, but all the kinds of discoveries that they are making actually, that they are dealing in finding new planets and then finding new possibilities about how to deflect a comet, for example, or a meteor if it's coming this way, and possible life on other planets and exoplanets that are way out in other galaxies. And do they have the right conditions, what they call the Goldilocks condition, just the right amount of temperature, air, water, and food that we could survive on if we could ever get there. But the fact that it would take us maybe thousands of years to get there, but yet maybe the business of time warp and black holes and things like that, they're being studied very seriously around the world by astrophysicists and others. And the public just isn't getting that information because, in a way, it's too remote from them. They never feel like they'll ever get involved in it and too hard to understand. And quasars and things like they talk about, much of the public isn't getting much of that because it can't absorb it, or it just doesn't mean much directly to their daily lives.
Do NASA make their own money or something, or they just living for taxpayers' money?
I would say taxpayers' money, they have to be accountable to the taxpayer, and therefore their public records are supposed to be open. I say they do things like this. When I worked for them, my boss was not NASA or Kennedy Space Center. I could use that on my name, and we're working for them, and my name card, very proud to say that I work for NASA. But in fact, a subcontractor runs that whole program of the visitors program. It's called Delaware North. It's the name of the company. So my boss is Delaware North and Company of Buffalo, New York, which sounds nothing to do with space program, but that's who paid the paycheck. But my name card and my title outside on the street was that I was a NASA communicator.
Okay.
And I think there probably maybe many other things like providing food service. Probably are contractors who bring the food out to, run the kitchens out on Kennedy Space Center. So I'm sure there are private contractors with many aspects, trash collection or water and sewage from the city, other vendors who provide for them.
All we know how hard astronauts training and how much time they spend on this. And of course, most of this we saw in the movies. Okay. But what we didn't see in the movie, what they doing something special that nobody know.
Yes, okay. Yes, they train for at least a year. They train in Houston. Houston, Texas is a control center. Kennedy is launch center. If you launch a rocket, it's launched at Kennedy, and the control room, you see that man talking, 9, 8, 7, 6, launch, and he's in Florida. 6 seconds after the rocket launches, amazing, control switches to Houston. And Houston talks to the spaceship. And you hear, Houston, we have a problem, or Houston, this is ISS, please do such and such. So Houston, and so it is not only the control center, it is also the home of the astronauts while they're training, so they live there. And while they live there and are training, they, of course, do all kinds of special physical and mental training experiences. But one unique thing, and you can go visit the Houston Center, there's lots to see there, and one of them is what's called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. It's just a great big giant swimming pool, but probably the biggest swimming pool in the world because it could house a whole capsule for a spaceship or something, and the astronauts go in there and work down under the water because that's as close to no gravity as they can get while they're here on Earth. So they will run tests and go in that big pond with supervisors who are with them so that anything goes wrong, and they will work on a mock-up spaceship and unscrew the bolts and open the windows and do all the levers, so on, as if they were in space. And they got that feeling of floating, as we all know when we go swimming. So that helps to get them ready mentally and physically for when they're actually in space with near no gravity conditions.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Yes.
Not the same, of course, but
Not the same, but and close enough to at least get them ready for that. Yeah.
If you were offered a one-way ticket to the Mars, will you agree?
At my age, sure. I'm old, so I probably don't know how many years I have left. Why not go for the adventure?
Well, probably this will be an amazing adventure.
I wouldn't qualify, health-wise, but I think the oldest astronaut was John Glenn. He was an astronaut in the early program, but then he went up later on the space shuttle. And so I think he was about 88 at the time. And so he set the record. But no, or a trip to the moon, or just, no, never mind Mars and the moon. I'd be willing now to go on the space station, to take that flight up there and spend a couple of days and come back. And people do it who are guests. Of course, not 91-year-old people, but as you must know, the space station has taken many guests, and they have to train about a year. Almost not as tough as an astronaut because they're not technicians, but they're from many countries, and their country pays their ticket because the country wants the honor of having someone in space, and with reason. They want to study and do science, so they're not doing it just for a joyride. But there are two examples, if you can take the time on your program to do this, that are interesting to talk about. A Korean girl went up, and or government of South Korea paid her ticket, and so the South Korea can say, we have an astronaut now. For example, Thailand doesn't, Taiwan doesn't, but Korea did. But when the space capsule was landing in Russia, in Kazakhstan, it happened to have a very rough landing, and she was really scared, and she said, never again. But there's another one, a Malaysian. Malaysia wanted to have an astronaut, and Malaysia wanted to go, and there were some interesting problems. He was a Muslim, and of all times, he went up at the time of Ramadan. And so when you're in a space station, you keep going around the Earth every 90 minutes, and so day, night, when do you do your prayers? 5 times a day, because you're going around doing 60 minutes? And do you do fasting? Because the timing of the space going around the Earth, of the space station going around the Earth, is every 90 minutes. And I think the imams in Kuala Lumpur said, okay, you can adjust to deal with that program. So yes, there are we call them space guests or space visitors. So it costs about $2.5 million or so, and people with money have done that just for the fun, not for the fun, but just to do it.
I didn't know that NASA provides the service like this. I thought it's only for private.
Early in the beginning, the Soyuz ship of the Russians wanted to, for the political reasons, get a Bulgarian, a Hungarian, an East German, and so on, and got each one to send one up. So that's true. I think a Mongolian may have gone up even. But then later, when the space station came up, they opened it up to this business of space tourism, where you can hitch a ride if you pay the money.
So if I have $2.5 million, I can.
You can do it.
Really?
So keep saving.
Okay. I'll start saving today.
I'll go with you. Save double.
Yes. What is the main goal for NASA for next 50 years? How do you think?
Well, they have this slogan of back to the moon and onto Mars and beyond. Back to the moon, then onto Mars and beyond. So that kind of sums it up. And yes, we do it. We hope we keep setting the date back, the goalpost, because the technology, we want it really to be safe and more valuable than just planting a flag and getting some very important information for sure. Very important, but now to get maybe even to start mining ores or bringing back something commercially valuable. So the reason I'm mentioning this date is that when I was giving those talks at the Space Center, that was like the year 2005, and we were saying we plan to do this by 2020, and now they're saying 2030, and now not sure that it's that soon. It's not easy to do it right, and yet the competition is on, especially with China now. Russia has a robust space program yet, but they seem to have lagged behind in terms of China catching up. So then Mars, and that's a giant challenge. Then after that, if we really want to go beyond that, we have to start dealing with the time question of, millions and millions of miles or hundreds of years to get to Uranus or to Neptune or someplace like that, another planet.
So what is the main dream? What is the main idea? Why do we do this all research? Why do we explore the space? What we are looking for? We are looking for some life, or we are looking for a God itself?
Yeah, there are kind of one or two, three answers for that. One of them is man just wants to explore. We always want to learn more. You see a crossroads.
It's our nature.
Yeah, so it's our nature to go to discover our past, and maybe the second answer, to learn more about our past, because there'd be certain technologies we could learn, or the development of the moon's creation and how it was created, or Mars or the other planets, that would tell us probably about how Earth created. So there's that. Then maybe to come in contact with other life somewhere in a faraway exoplanet. So that could be a goal. Or there's another mundane goal that I probably should have started with first instead of making fourth. There's something else called the spin-offs of the space program. All kinds of things we use right now, talking on this microphone and making your video, and computer microchips and cell phones and so on. So much of it are spin-offs from the space program. The space program egged those things on to be developed, and there are all kinds of things like firemen's uniforms now and so on are made safer because of things they tested in space. Physical, actual things that we do on our Earth right now in our everyday life that had at least some origin in the space program. Mm-hmm. So it's very beneficial. The question of why do we spend money on space when we should help the poor people or cure cancer? Well, let's do those too, but we still can do plenty in space that will reap benefits, that will benefit mankind.
Very interesting. How do you think we will see humans living on Mars in next, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 years? Is it possible actually to do?
Yes, I think sooner than that. I'm just my own personal viewpoint of everything. If we look at 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there were no cell phones. It's just the beeper where you beep somebody. And now we have this amazing device that talks to anybody in the world with videos and almost unbelievable things we can do with just cell phones. But everything from electric vehicles and electric boats and electric trains, electric trucks, and battery, this and that, and all clones and drones and the things that are approaching with AI. That moves all at an accelerating rate of speed. Every invention seems to lead to 5 more. So the things we are thinking about, what will it be like in 10 years, I almost back up in my mind to 2 years or 3 years. We'd be stunned if we even just think of 2 or 3 years ago, the new things that have just happened that are becoming commonplace. Are stunning to us. I'm not into it yet because I have other things to do, but things like ChatGPT, and there's a new one now, Elon Musk has come out called Guk, I think it's called.
Grok.
And my son said, get on it right away, it'll do amazing, answer many of your problems that you have to deal with. You talk to another machine, and the machine answers back, gives you all the answers you need about serious problems, personal problems, legal problems. And, a few years ago, okay, some of that was experimental. Voice itself, in the early voice things where you'd get a voice talking to you on a computer, you're playing chess, and then a voice talks to you and said, next move. It had kind of an accent the way it was. Now it's standard American voice or German or British or French voice. without all those broken grammatical structures and so on. It's fluent language that they're answering you now. And pretty soon you'll be like we'll have robots that'll be talking to us and doing what we ask them to do. And to the point that, of course, then there's the big fear of the world. We don't know. AI could destroy us. Some bad people make bad use of it, or robots that become destructive and do their own thing. And so the big worries are out there as well as the big hope for the future.
We have big worries about a lot of things, not only
Yes.
AI, about the people also.
Yes.
What is the one thing about the space that still blows your mind? That you cannot still believe?
Yes. Yeah, interesting. The fact that we're just doing all of this is going at such a high rate of speed of development. Maybe just what I referred to, therefore it's repetitive, but this idea that I can now sit at a machine in front of my face and talk to anybody in the world and get answers and see them and interact with them and what that will be for the future. Everything is mind-blowing now. It really,
Actually, every day.
It really is. I mean, years ago, like when I was a kid, a ballpoint pen was something special that came out around 1950. And now we throw them away. We just get them by the hundreds. So today's technology is, I guess it's a general answer, the whole picture of AI and what's happening and what will happen. Like everybody says, we would like world peace. And I wish these things could be made to make the world better and get people to get along.
I'm pretty sure it will make more better. Okay, thank you very much for the conversation. It was amazing, interesting, and it's interesting to see your experience from NASA as well and your thoughts about all these space things. Please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to see more videos, upcoming more podcasts. See you. Bye-bye.
Okay, and thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Pleasure.